What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We are bumping right along to the next position to evaluate for the Seattle Seahawks in this upcoming free agency period. And again, we are now at the positions where the need is relatively small, where there isn't necessarily a lot that you need to do, but there's probably something that you can do. So we're on edge rusher, or in this defense, outside linebacker, or traditionally defensive end, however you want to look at it. But the bottom line is we're looking for edge rushers now. And edge rushers, they get paid. The guys who play on the edge get the big money. So if you want to get a premium edge rusher, it's going to cost you upwards of 20 million. Some of these guys are now starting to go for close to 25. So we're not really going to be talking about that, right? There's no point in having that conversation because we couldn't afford it, and we don't really need an edge rusher like that. As it stands right now, the Seahawks are going into 2024 with Uchenna Nwosu on one side and Boye Mafe on the other side. That's pretty good. Now, hopefully Nwosu comes back from the injury well. We need him to come back and be the force that he was in 2022, but we just gave him that contract, so it's not like there's anything that we can do to get out of it at the moment, so we just got to ride with it. And he was really good before he got hurt, so I don't see any reason to believe that the injury is going to derail his career. I don't. So you have that, and then you have Mafe, who broke out last year, really nice season. So you've got your starters. So you don't need a star, you don't need a superstar, you don't need a starting caliber edge. You need somebody who can rotate in off the bench and be pretty good and not be somebody who just sucks up snaps and is completely ineffective like Frank Clark was last year. We pick up Frank Clark and he was basically invisible for every snap he was on the field for the Seahawks. We need something better than that. Now you do have Derek Hall, who did nothing last year. He should improve significantly this year, but that can't be the only thing. If that's the only thing you've got coming in off the bench, you're going to have a bad time of it. You need to do better than just Derek Hall. Even if he takes a big leap up, that's not enough. Darrell Taylor is a restricted free agent. You could keep him, but he's regressed significantly with each year in the NFL, it feels like. So you might just decide we're not even going to offer him the tender. So you need a fourth guy, and that fourth guy needs to actually be able to play some football. So in this video, I want to go through 3 guys at the edge position that stand out to me that I think would be reasonably priced, but would have some pretty nice upside. We would feel good about having these guys in our arsenal. Now, before I get into the players, one thing to understand: some of these players have not played in a 3-4 defense before, so we don't know if they can do it. And some of them might not be able to. That's a determination we're going to have to make based on their tape. That's a determination that this team is going to have to make, because it's not just any 3-4. It's Mike McDonald's 3-4. He's going to have to look at these players and decide if they can do the things that he's going to need to do. And that's definitely the case for a couple guys in this video. So the first guy we're talking about is Dorrance Armstrong Jr. of the Dallas Cowboys. There's a connection with him and AD, the defensive coordinator, because AD came from Dallas. And Dorrance Armstrong Jr., he's just turning 27 this offseason, so he should be coming into his prime, former 4th-round pick. He's been in the league 6 years already, so he's came into the league really young. And after a quiet first 3 years, he's really broken out over the last 3. Ever since Dan Quinn got there with Aiden Durd, they've had a lot of success developing Armstrong. 5 sacks in 2021, which got him a, I think, 2-year, $12 million deal. And he hit 2022, 8.5 sacks. 2023, 7.5 sacks. Been very productive as a pass rusher. The pressure numbers are pretty good, too. Excuse me. An unusually high number of his pressures the last 2 years have ended in a sack, which is a little bit alarming, admittedly. Also alarming is the fact that he plays with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And Odigizua, while we're at it, actually. He's been really good, too. So life is easier as an edge rusher when you have those guys to play off of. So admittedly, there is definitely some potential for him being a product of his situation. PFF thought he played quite well in 2023. They graded him out very respectably. In 2022, not so much. And then his breakout year, 2021, they thought he was pretty good. So I imagine Armstrong's going to get somewhere around 7 or 8 million a year, because it's got to be more than he got before, right? Because he got a 2-year deal to prove that he was for real, and then he did. So Dorrance Armstrong, he's got to get more, right? The cap's gone up, his production's gone up, he's about to turn 27. I don't think this will be a 8-figure-a-year guy, because, I mean, come on, guys. He plays with Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and Oso Odigizua. There's got to be some recognition on the part of these GMs that he's not as good as his numbers. He's good, but he's not as good as his numbers. Also, the pressure numbers are a little bit concerning. So that would be one, I think, pretty solid option. The next guy, this is probably my favorite guy that we could get in free agency in terms of cost. It's Jadeveon Clowney. I'd love to bring Jadeveon Clowney back to Seattle. I loved him when he was here in 2019. I know it wasn't perfect. I know that there were some issues, some problems. I know he wasn't everything we thought we were getting, but he was a nice player for us, effective against the pass, effective against the run, versatile, can play on the edge, can play on the line, can move up and down the defense, does all kinds of different stuff, still an excellent athlete. Only 31, by the way. Age is not a big concern. I understand that he's been in the league for 10 years, so he's probably a little bit beat up, but I think he can give you some more good football. Last year, he had 9.5 sacks for the Ravens, so he was able to go out there and prove that he still belongs in this league after having a down season in 2022. And look, there are definitely things with Clowney that you're going to have to gird yourself for, right? He is injury prone. You get him, he could miss some time. He was able to play a full 17-game season in Baltimore, but you look at his previous seasons, he's missing time. Sometimes he misses a little time, sometimes he misses a lot of time. But you are getting a great all-around player who gives you great reps against the pass and against the run, can play multiple spots, multiple positions. Not worth the #1 overall pick all those years ago, but a very good player who proved that you put him in a good situation like the Ravens did. You put him in Mike McDonald's defense. He can cook. So Jadeveon Clowney, to me, would be the ideal guy to bring in here to round out this edge room. Spotrac says 1 year, $7.3 million. I think that is basically the upper edge of what we can spend on an edge player right now because of all the money we already have invested. And, of course, the need to bring back Leonard Williams, the need to bring in a linebacker, the need to do some stuff with the offensive line. I don't think we can go much higher than this, but I do think we could go here for a guy who's going to help. And Jadeveon Clowney would come in here and help for sure. I'd be okay with this if you could maybe shave it down a little bit just because of his age and because of his reputation as a player that isn't to be trusted long term. Then, you know, that's certainly cool too. I would do 1 year, $6 million all day, 1 year, $7 million. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a long-term deal because he's older and he's been up and down throughout his career. But make it happen, and this is going to be a great edge room. You don't need Derek Hall to have some big breakout year now in order for you to maintain a quality level of play from your edge crop. And you would then be able to just say, okay, we're writing known quantities, right? We know Clowney's good. We know Maffe's good. We should know that Nwosu's good. One more guy in this video, and this is probably the biggest upside play, AJ Epinenza. I remember really liking this guy in the draft a couple years ago. So Epinenza becoming a free agent this offseason, spent 4 years in Buffalo. First 2 years didn't do anything. Last 2 years came around, 6.5 sacks each of the last 2 years. So we're actually starting to see some stuff from him. He's getting some pressures again. He's another one of these guys that doesn't generate a ton of pressure. A pretty disturbingly high percentage of his pressures the last 2 years have resulted in sacks. We don't love that, admittedly. That's a little bit of an alarm bell if you're looking at this, right? It's like he has the exact same number of pressures in each of the last 3 seasons, but the last 2 years, he's gotten 6.5 sacks. 2021, he got 1.5 sacks. Maybe he's no different than the player he was in 2021, and he just so happens to get a few sacks more now because of just kind of random variance. So AJ Epinenza, there are some concerns here. He hasn't become the player Buffalo was hoping they were getting when they drafted him in the second round. Also, he's a little bit heavier than some of the other edge players that you can look at, 260. So there are concerns about him being able to play in a 3-4. By the way, I think those concerns also exist for a guy like Dorrance Armstrong, who is 255. It really just depends on your read on their ability to do what you need a edge rusher to do in your defense. So that's going to be up to McDonald. PFF did think he played very well, did believe that he played very well in 2023 for however much we want to credit that, but they did not like what he did in 2022 at all. So you can kind of see how just the sack numbers and the pressure numbers can paint a picture that isn't necessarily followed up by the people who are studying every single rep. But he's young, 25 years old, going to turn 26 right before the season starts. I do think you'd have to give him a multi-year deal. Spotrac estimates 2 years, 11.3. Something like that sounds about right, I imagine. So it would be a little bit cheaper than Clowney or Armstrong, but there's a reason why he's cheaper. He's not as good. He's not as much of a sure thing. He could be just a complete nothing player for you because, again, the difference between his 1.5 sack season and his 6.5 sack seasons are really, really hard to discern when he's getting the same number of pressures each year, right? So if you could get Epinenza for like $5.5 million a year over 2 years, I could definitely see the upside to that. I could definitely see the potential there. But realistically, this guy probably is what he is. He was in Buffalo for 4 years. That's a really good defense. He was playing with some really good players, and he was able to have some good seasons, but he never really broke out. Okay, so those would be the 3 guys that I think would be the most intriguing to bring in as edge depth. Another video coming later today with more edge players, and then we will be moving on from the position, but let me know what you think down below. See you guys later. Go Hawks.